Oh, well, hello there. So, welcome back to our work with confidence intervals. Today, we're going to actually work through an example here of a confidence interval with proportions. Next time, we'll do means, but today's proportions. So, let's see if we can set up the whole thing. All right, what do we remember from last time? And here's something you can do if you ever start to get confused. All we're saying here and all we're trying to answer is how well does the sample represent the population? So let's take a look at what we have here and let's talk through our 4 steps and let's work this out. Okay, so we're talking about New York City baseball fans and their team preference. Who do you like? Simple enough question, right? And so we're going to do a random sample. That's very important that it's random of 504 baseball fans. And of those, 267 preferred the Yankees. Now, that's a sample. Does that mean that the same percentage there of all New York City baseball fans prefer the Yankees? And that's like just over half, right? We can quickly see what that is. 267 divided by 504. Yeah, it's about 53%. Does that mean of all baseball fans? No, that's just our sample. But here's what we can do. As long as a few conditions apply, we can say that if I were to do repeated samples, that the average would be 53%. And I can set up a confidence interval right around 53 that should capture the actual preference of New York City baseball fans. You want to see how it works? Sure. Come on, let's try it. Okay, so I want to set up a 95% confidence interval for the true proportion of all NYC baseball fans. All right, well, let's see what we have. We have little n, our sample. That's 504. I've got x, my success for my question of 267, which gives me a p hat of 267 divided by 504. And I'm going to go ahead and round this just a little bit. It ends up being 52.98%. Okay. Now, that's my p hat. And so here's what we're saying. If you were to survey different groups of 504 people, 504 here, 504 here, 504 here, the results will be around 52.98. Some will be a little more, some will be a little less. And so the question is, can we get a standard deviation? Yes. And then the second question is, can we set up a 95% confidence interval, this time for P? What is the actual P? Is it between like 51 and 54? How about 50 and 50? I want to be 95% sure that I'm going to get the true value somewhere in there. Okay? Okay, well, let's do it. Let's test some conditions. How about this one? Is 504 less than or equal to 1/10 of all NYC baseball fans? I think so, considering there's 8 million people in New York City. There's probably more than 5,040 baseball fans, don't you think? So we're going to put a check by that one. How about N times P hat and N times 1 minus P hat? Are these both more than 10? Now, remember, what does this step mean? It simply means, is it worth doing the survey? Right? And sure enough, these are both true. So there are more than 10 successes in whatever you're trying to do. For example, if you were saying, well, how many people put red wine on their cereal? That's probably less than 10 of whatever amount you want to choose, right? So don't even bother with that survey. But for prefer the Yankees, I'm going to check those. Okay, so what does all this mean? This is what it means. This means the p-hats are normally distributed right around 53%. Let's set up a confidence interval. So when I took statistics, we had to actually use a formula. We would say 0.5298 plus or minus. Now for a 95% confidence interval, do you remember what the z is? I think you do. It's 1.96, right? Times the square root of p hat. I should have just stuck with 5.3, right? 1 minus p hat divided by n, 504. Now we know what you're thinking. You might be thinking, well, where does that 1.96 come from? Well, the 1.96 corresponds with the 95%. Okay? And you should remember that from your work on normal curves, right? Remember plus or minus 2 standard deviations is 95%? And it's actually 1.96. What if I wanted 90%? Well, then you would do 90 in the middle, right? 5% on either side. And you look that up on table A or inverse norm, and you're like 1.645. So you can find the Z star values, okay? You can do that. You've done it before, right? So where does all this come from? This is just p hat plus or minus Z star, parentheses, p hat, 1 minus p hat over n. And again, pause the video. Look up 95% in the middle. What are your z's going to be? The 2.5 on one side and 2.5 on the other side, right? Okay. Then what do? We calculate the interval. To do it, I'm going to use the 1 prop z int on my calculator. All right, so let's see if I can do that here. We can. Let's share the screen to our calculator. And let's take a look. Okay, so watch what I do here. Stat, tests, and then 1 prop z int, not 1 prop z test, 1 proportion z interval. Oh, X, my successes. N, my sample size. Confidence level, 0.95. So you notice here, you never have to find the Z star. But just know that your teacher wants you to know the Z star, and your teacher wants you to set up the formula. Okay, 4862 up to 5733. Okay, 1 prop Z int. Again, you can pause that, go back and do it again. Okay, now let's interpret this answer. So remember what we were doing here. Let's just do a quick review. We're interested in whether New York City baseball fans like the Yankees or the Mets or the Red Sox or some other team, right? So Cubs if they were smart. But let's say we're wondering if they like the Yankees. So what we do is we say, all right, we're going to do a random sample. We have age, gender, race, everything's going to be randomized, of 504 NYC baseball fans. Why 504? That just is a good number. It's less than 10% of all of them, so it works for us. In our sample, 267 prefer the Yankees. Now, does that mean that if I were to interview every New York City baseball fan, the 267 would, exactly that same percentage here would prefer the Yankees? You're right. No, it doesn't. But it's close. How close is it? That's why you're watching this video. How close is it? Well, we are 95% confident that the true proportion of New York City baseball fans that like the Yankees to proportion of Yankee lovers is between 48.62% and 57.33%. Notice what is in the middle of 48.62 and 57.33. Want to take a wild guess? Your P hat. What if I want to be 99% confident? I have to expand that interval, don't I? What if I want to be 75% confident? Tighten it up. But this is how we set up a confidence interval for a proportion. Let's step back and bask in the glory of this problem. Very nice. Okay, so what I'd like you to do would be to start the video over, press pause before I fill all this in, and see if you can do it. Have a great day.